Why is it that you don't see big inboard-outboard sterndrive engines in small boats and tight spaces? It's because you don't put prime rib in a sausage casing.
Hey, and you're not wearing one of these, I see.
No.
Why is that?
You can't put prime rib in a sausage casing. It just doesn't have it.
Hi, I'm Sean from Cove Lessons in Boating. Sterndrive engines have been around for decades, and they have a lot of advantages. But on today's video, we're going to talk about the problems with sterndrive engines so that you are aware of them before you purchase one. Problem number one, they are heavy. They are large because they're usually a truck engine or car engine. They have large exhaust manifolds which go up and they help keep the water from going into the engine and into the boat. And because of that width and that height, they take up a lot of room. They're also heavier for the comparably powered outboard. So the power to weight ratio in a 300 horsepower outboard is better than with a 300 horsepower sterndrive. Problem number two, storage space. Given that they're large, and given that they take up so much space inside the boat, they are going to take over and use a lot of storage space. When you have an outboard powered boat in the exact same configuration, you're going to find there's more room on board for amenities and storage. Problem number three, maintenance and repairs. A comparable outboard engine is going to cost less to maintain and repair than an inboard outboard. Why is that? An inboard-outboard engine typically takes more oil. It typically has more cylinders, so more spark plugs. Typically needs a tune-up more often because it has a cap and rotor, unlike solid-state ignition in a outboard. It has bellows in the drive, so those bellows wear out over time. It has a shift cable. So more things on an inboard-outboard engine can break and need to be replaced in routine maintenance. They are not completely cost prohibitive, but if you were comparing the same outboard to the same inboard outboard, your maintenance and repair costs will be slightly higher. When you're working on them, or a technician in a marine dealership is working on them, you will find that some boats are very tight around the inboard outboard engine. We've had instances where a starter needs to be replaced, or in extreme cases, spark plugs need to be replaced, and we've actually had to remove the engine just to do the service. And that's a big job. Problem number four, the inability to trim the drive all the way out of the water. So an outboard engine which pivots at the top of the transom, you can tilt it all the way out of the water, and that's particularly advantageous when you're in a saltwater environment, or if you just like to keep your outboard clean. On a sterndrive or inboard outboard, because it pivots at the water line, you can't get the entire drive out of the water when you trim it up. So in a saltwater environment, you are exposing that drive, that aluminum and those metals to more corrosion than in the case of an outboard. Also, if you need to get the drive out of the water for shallow water driving, it makes it a little harder. And when you trim up that drive, you're exposing the bellows to sea critters that could chew them. 5. More fuel. Inboard-outboard sterndrives tend to be larger displacement and also are heavier, so they will use more fuel just through the laws of physics than a comparably powered outboard. A current day 300 horsepower Mercury outboard is 4.6 liters displacement, and a current day Mercury inboard-outboard 300 horsepower is 6.2 liters. That difference alone, plus the weight, will use more fuel. Problem number 6, an inboard-outboard engine sits inside the boat, and therefore, in case there is a fuel leak, you need to use the blower in order to remove any potential fuel vapors to make sure that there's no fire or explosion risk. On an outboard engine, you don't need a blower. So in your boat, of course, you don't want an explosion. That would be bad. Your engine is a controlled explosion. In fact, a fuel vapor that goes into your engine with air is what drives the engine. That controlled explosion over top of the piston is what creates the power in order to make the boat and car and all the other things move. So that's a good thing inside the engine, but it's horrible inside the boat. There are tons of benefits to inboard-outboard engines. They make the swim platform clean with no obstructions. They feel more car-like. They're heavier and they ride a little bit smoother in rough water. But there are some negatives, and you can put big packages in small spaces, but it causes problems. If you're still comparing outboards versus inboards and want a little bit more comparison, watch out this video here. Thanks very much for watching today's Cove Lessons in Boating, and we'll see you out on the water.